So, welcome to our mini-Yeshiva series on a beautiful Sunday morning in the vacation time. And this is usually the time when we have very little anxiety because we don't have to run and juggle all of our regular duties. At least we hope so. But somehow, always, for most of us, anxiety creeps up in one way or another. So today's class, the first class, will be about anxiety, how to overcome and do away with it. Now, I'm not here talking as a therapist, I'm not here talking from a scientific point of view. Today we're going to talk about anxiety from a Torah point of view. How a Torah, knowledgeable, observant person gets the answers from Torah, because to us all answers come from Torah. How to deal with anxiety. Now, we live in a very high-pressured world. The world's very demanding. There's so many things that we have to do that people never had to do. Jobs, balanced bank accounts, credit. We're all taking upon ourselves high credit by buying houses and cars and other types of things. We're constantly trying to juggle, and our kids' education today costs an enormous amount of money. Quebec, maybe it's not that bad yet, but it's still quite high. And then all the bills we have to pay, and then you got to buy insurance for what may happen, what may not happen. And before you turn around, there's so many things going. That's before any real tsaras happens, before anything real problematic happens in our life. There's already such a demand on us that there's a lot of anxiety. We're a society is full of anxiety. I think today, America is the biggest user of antidepressants because the anxiety that exists within society, in the society that has more than any other society ever had in the history of the world. But the stress and the anxiety is incredible. And it's not only safe for adults, children as well. From young, children already are anxious. They go into school, it's like a boot camp. They have to follow schedules. Since when the children are supposed to follow a schedule? They follow schedules, and you have to be on time, and parents are pressuring their children to be asleep at a certain time and up at a certain time. And you have to go to this lesson and that lesson when they go into school. They have to have so many extracurricular activities that they're so busy, they have like diaries, date books for all of their activities. They don't know when they're available. These are little kids. It's not them talking about the societies where they're already enrolling their children before they're born into universities for medical and legal and other. So this anxiety-driven society that we're in is not just reserved for adults, it's affecting children as well. There is definitely a big role of anxiety is that we have illusory expectations of life. We live in a world, because we're exposed to so much, a little shtetl of the world. We see everything. We see people's big successes. Not just our next door neighbor or someone in our community. We see incredible successes going on all around, brought to our front door by the TV, by all the different type of news outlets and channels. We're privy to see the lives of people, the inside lives of people who have, seems like everything in the world going for them. So we start thinking, why am I not like them? How come I don't have that type of success? How come I work hard? So we live in a world today that we also have an incredible amount of expectations of life and from life, or what we call today entitlements, that are not real. And therefore, there's no match between the reality of our lives and what we dream of that we should be having. Not that we dream of maybe I hit the jackpot one day I will have. We should be having. It belongs to us. So I'm not even going to discuss that because that's another whole subject, which is the 10th commandment about jealousy and other things, but that we're not going to talk about now. I want to talk about real life anxiety that comes from real life that we live, not these unusual expectations. Real life that we live, there's always anxiety driving things. Yes, there are some people who feel less anxiety. Some will feel more and more anxiety, but anxiety is a part of every one of our life. And why? Anxiety makes us, when you feel anxious, you start tightening up. You start feeling weaker within yourselves. Many people, it starts bringing them down. and it creates all other types of problems, and it distances you from people, and it doesn't allow you to live life fully. I'm not talking about also real cases of people who just can't get up in the morning because they're anxious. I'm talking about people who live their lives, but yet it has so many negative effects on us. What is the way that we're supposed to deal with anxiety? How do we get rid of anxiety? How do we just get rid of it once and for all? So first of all, we must know that anxiety is normal. That's the first thing we must know. Anxiety is normal. There is no such a thing as a world without anxiety. There's always some type of anxiety that existed in life. And I'll talk a little bit about why we say it's normal. First, a source in the Torah, and then just to explain, to understand what healthy anxiety is. So the Torah, the first thing the Torah tells us is that God created, in the beginning when the world was created, there was Vayerev, Vayiboker, Yom Echad. There was more evening and morning one day. Vayikra Elokim La'or Yom. God called light day. Well, second, Yom Echad, one day was evening and morning, was dark and light. Then it says Hashem called light day. So what is day? Day is not, day. Yom, day in Hebrew, is when it's light outside, or day includes light and darkness. So you see, the way it's described in the Torah, first comes dark, then comes light. That's going to be our life. Every one of us is going to experience, like what the world experienced in the moment it was created. There is always some kind of darkness. Darkness is anxiety. We're unsure of what the outcome of something will be. We're unsure of how things will play itself out. We're unsure what tomorrow will bring. Darkness is fine. It's part of day. Because darkness is the first step to real light. If you don't have darkness, you don't have light. Not only you don't appreciate the light if you don't have darkness before it, but if you don't have darkness, you don't have light. A little bit of anxiety is what helps us make our light light. When a person has a little bit of anxiety and you go out to work, that helps bring you together to go do your work successfully. If you walk into work totally a free spirit, without feeling a little bit of a focus of what you have to do, the chances are you won't do that well. Anxiety creates that little level of focus. I got to pay attention because it may not work out. It may not be very good. So anxiety in life before we do something is what actually brings us together. The Erev before Boker, the evening before light, is a little bit of nervousness about something, a little anxiety. How will it work? So therefore I got to try harder. I got to be more focused. I got to pay attention to what I'm doing. And that's normal. That before our stomach knots up a little bit, before we're going to do something of any significance or consequence in our life. And you talk to very successful people, entertainers, sports people, who you would think they are so well versed in what they do. They wake up in the morning, jump out of bed, and they can run the 100-meter 100 meters in a minute, no problem. They can go and swim an Olympic swimming competition, no problem. Let's talk to any of them. They'll tell you every race they go into, every competition, their stomach is knotted. And that's the reason they perform. If they wouldn't be knotted, they would definitely not perform. So in life, it's going to be, don't ever think for a moment that anxiety will not exist. Some anxiety to exist is normal. Hashem designed the world in that way, which helps us really come from the darkness to come to real light and be successful in our life. So anxiety, we have to accept, is a fact of life. We're never going to get rid of it. We can't run away from our anxieties that we have. The question is, how do we allow anxiety's message to lead to positive instead of to draw us into negative territory? And that's what I want to talk a little bit about here. Some things that we see from Torah, and not going to be necessarily, it's a little disjointed, but I'm going to talk about, just bring a few different things that we find in the Torah to understand, and Jewish thought and wisdom to understand. So King Solomon in Proverbs, in Mishlei, says a verse, Daga belev ish yashchena, v'davar tov yisamchena. He says, if there's a concern in a man's heart, King Solomon, the wisest of men, says, if there's a concern in a man's heart, Yashchena, let him cast it down. If you're concerned about something, you're anxious about something, cast it down. And a good word will make it cheerful. That's the verse he says. What does it mean? Cast it down. Is that like a poetic thing? Cast it down. Where do you cast it? Where does it go away to? What do you mean cast it down? What's the actual thing that King Solomon is trying to tell us? So King Solomon is telling us, we could read it in several ways. Yashchena, what it means, cast it down. One is, if you have a concern in your heart that's leading you to be anxious about an issue that you're facing, or an issue that you may face one day, or whatever it is that's going on in your life, the first thing is Yashchena. There are three ways of explaining Yashchena. Cast it down means to suppress it. What does it mean to suppress it? The worst thing you can actually do is to suppress something and hide it inside of you, because what happens in life is that when something's going on inside of you and you don't somehow deal with it, it just builds up like a volcano. And one day it's just going to explode. And until it explodes, you may think you're in control. But when it explodes, it's bad news. It's not good for you or for anyone around you. And it's not the way of totally suppressing. Suppressing is not, well, that's not what it means, Yashchena, to suppress, to cast it down. The first thing Shlomo Melech is telling us is that if you have a concern or anxious about something, suppress means cut it to size. Very often, you open up your mail and you get a letter from the government. Ooh! The government wants to check me out. The government is sending me. Right away you get fearful. The government, the big powerful government. I'm a little nobody. What's going to happen to me? They're going to destroy my life. First thing is, cut it to size. Every issue that we face, whether it's a small issue, or even whether it's a big issue, we have to put it in the right size and the right perspective. Even if someone's facing, God forbid, a very serious issue, a health issue that could affect their lives, how they will live out the rest of life, or if they will live, etc. But everything, you have to put it in the right size to be able to deal with it. If it's a balloon that just blocks you, you can't do anything. But even if it's a big size thing, but at least you put it into size. Now you say, okay, it has corners, it has size. How do I tackle it? How do I grab it and sort of take control of it? So the first thing you have to do is you have to cut everything to size. You have to take a step back and say, okay, I'm dealing with a difficult situation. I have a big job interview tomorrow, the job of my life, may get it or not. I have a big sales pitch tomorrow. I'm going to the doctor for an ailment that I have. I'm not sure what's really going on. Or God forbid, whatever it is you're facing, or any regular things in life. You're going to meet a potential partner for marriage. Cut it to size. Put it in the perspective, say, okay, this is not my whole life. There are other things going on in my life as well. I have a life. I have a family, I have a work, I have whatever it is. We have many things going on in our life. Let me deal with it as an issue, not as something that's taken over my life and I have nothing else except this. Because that's when we lose ourselves. So the first thing King Solomon said, you have to learn how to cut it to size. A very important matter of dealing with an issue. I'm going to explain what he said, then we'll go deeper into understanding a little more how you get about doing it. The second thing it says, Yashchena, is you have to ignore it. You have to ignore it. Well, how do you ignore something that's going on in your life? Ignoring it means that you have to separate it, the issue, from yourself. Very often when an issue goes on in our life, we start saying, it's me. That's who I have become. That's who I am. Now I am a bad person. Now I am a sick person. That defines you fully who you are. Torah tells us that any issue we deal with, even if someone did a sin, someone did something terrible, that they intentionally did something wrong, they did something terrible, they did something that's very sinful and harmful, but never associate the issues that you're facing even if it's a consequence of your action, as defining who you are, and this is your box. It's an issue that I am dealing with, not that this has become me. Because the minute it's become you, a person can never extricate themselves from their own issue. When you're in the forest, you can't take yourself out of the forest. But when you look at the forest as something that's outside of you, you can start dealing with it as well. Because it's not you. It's an object that you're dealing with. It's an object that fell into your hands. Now I can't let go. I gotta figure out what to do with it. So, besides cutting it to size, even if you cut it to size, if it redefines you, what happened to you redefines you, well, all of a sudden, then you're lost. There's no way of you helping yourself. So you have to learn how to separate what you're facing. And this is small stuff you may face every day. And you. My work doesn't define me. Even my health doesn't define me. A person could be very full human being, even if, God forbid, they don't have their health. And there are many people you may meet in your life, you may have met, who are full human beings, even though they have disabilities and they have health issues and they're poor, because those people learn how not to associate the issues they're dealing with, which would cause anxiety, with themselves. I am a full person that's dealing with an issue. So secondly is you have to learn how to, it's not about you. What's interesting is, we're in Hanukkah. In Hanukkah there's a fascinating discussion between the house of Shammai and the house of Hillel. You've all heard of the rabbis, the great rabbis Shammai and Hillel. Two of the great rabbis, the peers, always arguing with each other. Best of friends, great respect for each other, but they have two different ways of seeing many things, and many halachic issues they argue. So the house of Shammai and the house of Hillel have an argument in Hanukkah. I don't know how many of you are aware that they argue about an issue in Hanukkah. The issue that affects every one of us. We're all lighting the menorah every night, right? Last night we lit 7, tonight we're going to light 8. But do you know, according to Shammai, what you really were supposed to do is the first night of Hanukkah light 8, second night 7, 6, and tonight we light 1 candle. Hillel says, this is the way we follow, you light 1 the first night, 8 the last night. So what are they arguing? I mean, really, does everything in Judaism have to be an argument? I mean, just for argument's sake, are 8 to 1 or 1 to 8? I mean, come on, can't we agree on anything? I mean, so Hanukkah is a beautiful celebration. Why do we have to go crazy? But they're arguing about something very fundamental. And the arguing is that the Shammai is of the opinion. Shammai came from a very disciplined place of gvura, of strength, of no nonsense. And Beis Shammai said, the whole idea of Hanukkah is to minimize the effect of the outside world's influence on us. That's what the miracle of Hanukkah was, that the Greeks had a terrible influence on the Jewish people. And we're able to shed ourselves of that influence, and we want to remember every time to be able to shed ourselves of the influence of the negative of coming from the cultures around us, especially those that are fighting against the basic morals, values, and beliefs of Judaism. So Beis Shammai is of the opinion that the only way to deal with it is that you got to confront the evil directly. You got to deal with the evil directly, and you got to face the evil, look it in the face, the evil, and you got to punch him out. So you need the first night 8 candles to go with all strength to try to minimize the evil. Once you minimize a little bit, the next night 7 candles is enough. So meaning you got to look the evil all the time. You got to hold it close to you, and you got to always try to. So his way of development is that you got to know all your negative traits that you have, and hold it close to you, and try to, beat them down. So the first night with 8 candles, second night with 7 candles, 6. You're always a little successful when you light candles. Beis Hillel says that it's very hard for every person to garner enough strength to start beating down the negatives that they have within themselves or right around you. It's like you're fighting an opponent. The chances are 50-50. You win, you don't win. Sometimes you get too involved with the opponent, they'll knock you down and he'll take you over. So Beis Hillel is of an opinion, don't focus on the negative within you. Don't focus on negative around you. Focus on yourself and build up your positive. Start with 1 candle. Start focusing on the good within you and build it up. Build up the good within you. 1 candle, 2 candles. And the more you focus on the good, the negative will fall by the wayside. Because you strengthen yourself and the negative doesn't become an issue anymore. The stronger you are, the more self-efficient you are, the more self-esteem you have, the more self-pride you have. All of a sudden the negative can't knock down your door because you're powerful. So this is part of what we're talking about. Ignoring it's not you. It's a little more of the Hillel approach, that you have to disassociate yourself sometimes from what's bothering you and say, it's not me. Put it in a box somewhere. It may visit me all the time. It may be in front of me, but it's not me. Me is me, and I have to focus on me and who I am and what I am and deal at some point with the issues that I face. The third thing is, Yashchena comes from the word Yisichena, which means you have to speak about it. You have to speak to others. We live in a society that very often, people are told that if you have problems, don't talk about it to others. They'll ruin your image. They won't respect you in the same way. They won't look at you in the same way. I mean, unless you're part of the Oprah Winfrey type shows and everything, where everyone comes out and talks out everything that's going on in their life, or their imaginations, what's going on in their imaginations. But the most of society doesn't talk about what's going on in their life. I'm not talking about craziness. I'm talking about regular struggles and issues that they have. They don't talk about you have to suppress. Don't talk about it to others. So what happens is you're carrying, not only you have a concern or a worry about an issue, a person you have an issue with, or other issues you have, but all of a sudden you're carrying that load, and the load bears interest all the time. It grows within you, and it drags you down. It's always what's inside of you, and something that festers in you goes stronger and stronger. Somehow it's not you're not dealing with it. So very important, you have to learn how to speak to others, confide in others. You don't have to go into Oprah and tell the whole world your problem. But you have to find a friend. And that's why actually in Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of Our Fathers, it says twice, Aseh lecha rav. You have to get yourself a mentor, a teacher, a mentor. Get yourself a good friend. Why? Because a person has to be able to share their issues with other people. Because you know what we find? When you have an issue weighing heavy on you, and you share it with someone who you know cares about you, is concerned for your well-being, when they listen, they're paying attention to you, they're not looking, I'm better off than you because I don't have that problem. You know, we're talking about people who are real friends. All of a sudden you feel like a load came off of you. Just by sharing it. You're ready, someone else is helping you carry the weight. It's very important to share it with others. Not only that you take the load off of you, but very often because we're in the forest and the problem is with us, we don't really see the whole picture. We see it from one angle and we get stuck in that angle, and someone who's a friend or a mentor sees it and they can see it, that's a problem that can be so easily solvable because they're objective. They're not subjective to the issue. So it's very important to talk about it to someone else. Don't broadcast it, but talk about it to someone else. And that's why the Rebbe would encourage very often that everyone should have their mashpia, everyone should have their mentor who you can talk over issues with, who you can share issues with, who can give you objective advice, lend you support. Sometimes support alone can help you through the anxiety that you may have, but can give you valuable help that all of a sudden that's what caused you anxiety will not cause you any anxiety at all anymore, but something you'll be able to deal with and you'll be able to move forward. So King Solomon, in his one verse, is already telling us what we call today some cognitive therapy, some things that are very practical for all of us to do, which is either to cut it to size, so right away it doesn't become this big balloon, it's something that you can deal with as a sizable thing, it has a structure, it has a limit. Then remember, it's not about you, it's an issue you're dealing with that doesn't define you. And third, you have to learn to be able to confide in at least one or two people who care about you, not just some faceless people care about you. Now, I want to tell you, there's not long ago we celebrated the 19th of Kislev, which was the day that the first Chabad Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, was released from prison. And he was put into prison because he wrote the book Tanya. The book Tanya, written over 200 years ago, is the basic book of Hasidic teachings. But really, the book of Tanya is the best self-help book that has ever been written. Because it doesn't come out of people's theories, it's the truth of the Torah. It comes from the Torah, mostly from the Kabbalistic teachings, by understanding, helping us understand who we are as people, the forces that exist within us. What are the battles that are going on within us? What drives us to, in the same moment, be hopeful and fearful, be happy and sad, want to do good, but yet want to indulge in something that's not good. The heart, the mind, all the things going on. Where is this battles going on? What's really going on? Who is the person? How do you deal with it? And the one thing, the one underlying message of Tanya is that ultimately we have the ability to control most of the issues going on in our life. We can't control if we will feel anxious about an issue. We can't control how we will react to an issue. But we can control what we think about, meaning if we're going to delve into this anxiety-driving thing that's going on within us, if we're going to talk about it all day to ourselves or to others and just build it up to create a mountain out of a little molehill, or if we're going to act on it and make decisions by our actions to reinforce the anxieties. So though we can't control it, we said before, anxiety will exist, but we control the next step of how much attention and how much of our resources we put to help build that anxiety that exists within us through our speech, our thought, and our action. So we do control. It's very important to remember. We do control, ultimately, how once we feel some anxiety, how it will play itself out. We do control. That's going back to what King Solomon said. Because we can control, you have to cut it to size, realize it's not you, talk about it to others in the proper way. Now, one thing we find in the Torah very fascinating. Most people don't even realize it. Moshe was commanded by God to confront Paro and let the Jews go. Now Moshe was commanded by God, gave clear directions by God. But Moshe was very anxious. Moshe was fearful. He was afraid. And at one point, he didn't want to go to Pharaoh anymore. When we get to the Parsha Bo, Moshe says, God, I'm scared. I can't go. This guy's a monster. We gave already 7 plagues, and he hasn't budged. He's a monster. This guy, he's going to devour me. He's going to take me over. I can't stand up against such a guy. There was a Rebbe, the Kotzker Rebbe, Nachman of Kotsk, said that his hero in the Torah is Paroi, not because he loved Paroi, but a guy who has such character that he can stand up to God after so many plagues and miracles. This is a character. How could someone get such strong character? So Moshe was scared of Paroi. He was anxious. He didn't want to go. So what did Hashem tell him? Bo el Paro. He says, come to Paro. What does it mean, come to Paro? So Hashem was telling him, come with me to Paro. The only way you can deal with your greatest fears, with the greatest concerns, with your greatest issues, is to face it directly. You can't run away from your problems, because we realize that the problems run with us. They're inside of us. Wherever we run, it's going to follow us. You can't run away from your problems. The only way you can deal with issues that you face, that you have fear of, or that cause you anxiety, is face those issues directly. Confront it to the face. I don't know how many of you have ever tried, when you were dealing with an issue, to actually face the person that was causing you that angst. Face the person that was causing you fear. Face the person. You know what you'll find often? that when you face the fear itself, you find, wow, it wasn't as bad as I thought. It wasn't as hard as I thought. Who is the one that said, there's nothing to fear but fear alone? Huh?
Fear itself.
FDR said, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. When you face the fear and you don't run away, you will find very often that helps you start cutting it to size, starting the process. So the first level a person has to do is when you recognize that anxiety exists, you also have to know that the first level of it existing is to face it, not to run away from the issues that are going on. Face it. Look it in the eye. You know, in time management, when they teach people time management, the first thing that they tell you is deal with your most difficult issues of the day first. If you leave it till the last, it's going to work on your mind. It won't let you do all the other things properly. Deal with it first. Face your hardest thing first. Because once you climb that mountain, everything else is just a walk in the park. So, the more we are afraid and we run away from an issue, instead of facing the issue and dealing with it, so someone all of a sudden has mounting credit problems and they're not sure what to do and they're trying to run and make sure the bank doesn't find them and then they're away from home and the knock comes on the door and they don't open up the email. You think it's gone? You can ignore it. You can't. You got to face it. You got to look it in the eye. You got to look and you got to talk the truth and tell them what you can and can't do. And then all of a sudden you realize that you can climb down the mountain. It's not as hard as you thought. It's doable. So fear has to be faced. The issues that we bother us most, the issues that cause our greatest anxiety, we have to, if it's a person, you have to confront the person. In the right way, obviously, smart, but you got to confront the person. If it's an issue, you got to confront the issue straight on. Can't run away from it. You know, someone has a fear of flying. Don't stay away from planes and try to find what other means of transport will get you there. Get on a plane. Someone has a fear of heights. Get onto something high and start facing your fear. Because you can't run away and you can't shed yourself of it until you identify, you know exactly what it is, and you start looking at it straight in the eye. And that's what Hashem told Moshe. You're afraid. I understand you're afraid. You have every reason to be afraid. That Paro is a powerful person on earth. But if you go and face him, you'll find you'll be able to overcome. Why? So here we see the story of Rabbi Akiva. So the Talmud tells us a story in Tractate Brachos. Rabbi Akiva, the great rabbi, you all heard of him, I'm sure. So he was once traveling, like he often did, and he had with him a donkey, a rooster, and a candle. He goes to a city, it was getting dark, he wanted to rest for the night in the city, but somehow there was no space, no inns, no bed and breakfast, no people had room in their house, and he was dejected. He said, no one let him in the house, but you know what? Rabbi Akiva was a good-spirited person. He said, okay, no, we're here, I'll go to the forest. I'll set myself up in the forest and then I'll sleep the night there. So he goes into the forest. His donkey is there, his rooster to wake him up in the morning, his alarm clock, and his candle. He lit the candle, started to study Torah. All of a sudden, a wind came and blew out the candle. Now it was dark. Before long, the rooster was eaten by an animal, and then the donkey was hurt by an animal. Rabbi Akiva's left alone. No light, no rooster, no donkey. No. So he said, Gamzu l'tayva. Those were his famous words. This is also good. This is also good. If this is what God wanted, I accept it. And he went to sleep, couldn't learn the Torah, didn't have his rooster to wake him up, he lost his few belongings he had with him, but Gamzu l'tayva. He woke up in the morning, and he wants to go back to the town to buy some food or whatever, to go back to civilization. He goes back to the town, and it's a ghost town. Finally, a few people creep out of the houses and say, what's going on? Where's everybody? He said, you don't know what happened last night? A band of robbers came, and they destroyed, they took many people, everything, and they took many people as slaves. Rabbi Akiva says, Gamzul Taiva, it was really for the good. Because imagine if I would have had my candle burning, and my rooster, and my donkey, and they would have heard the noise of the robbers, and they would have seen the light, the robbers would have seen the light in the forest, or some of them would come after me, or they would have heard the noise, they would know someone is in the forest. Those things saved my life. Now, Rabbi Akiva didn't wait till it came to the morning, after he heard the story, to say, Gamzul Taiva was also good. When it happened, when everything happened to Gamzul Taiva, he said, this is also good. While it was happening, where did he get it within Gamzul Taiva? And this is a very important, and this is the most important part of what Judaism tells us. Rabbi Akiva recognized that this is God's world. We occupy this world. We are doing many things in this world that we think that we are in control of, and we are making the decisions to do. But the truth is, this is God's world. And God, it says, controls our steps. Wherever we end up going, wherever we end up in life, the small things, the big things, God has chosen our steps. God puts us where He wants us to be. Though He makes us often think that we're the ones who came up with the ideas and ended up there because we wanted to. Whether you're from Israel, suddenly you ended up in Canada, it's not because necessarily you thought of this idea, but God wanted you to be here. Whether you were Canada, ended up in Israel, wherever you were, this is what Hashem wanted. So Rabbi Akiva recognized that anything that happened in his life, even if he faced negative things, wow, I can't even study Torah. Why would someone not want me to study Torah? God wouldn't want me to study Torah. So, but he didn't think like that. He said, if something happened, then Hashem runs the world. There is no other forces really that control the world. Hashem runs the world. So Gamzul Taiva, if this is what Hashem wanted, my attitude is this is also good. Even though I don't understand it, even though it doesn't make sense to me, even though it seems like counterproductive. But this is Hashem's world. This is His universe. This is His plan. And that is the most important element of understanding when we see things going on, when we face things going on, the hardship of making a living, the other hardships that we have with our health, hardships we may have in relationships, hardships we may have with family members, hardships we may have with other people in the world, other types of issues that we may face. We have to remember that ultimately this is Hashem's world. The things that come our way is Hashem's plan. And Hashem, everything Hashem does is l'tovah, is for the good. Immediately it may not seem so. It may seem the opposite. But ultimately everything Hashem does to anyone in this world is for the good. So immediately we have to realize that whatever comes our way, ultimately is l'tovah, is good. So what does it mean it's good? So that's why I lay down in bed and I laugh all day. What do you mean it's good? It's good means that I have to work with whatever is coming my way. So this is my challenge I have to face. I'm going to face the challenge. I'm going to put in all my effort to do whatever I need to do. God forbid someone's dealing with health, I'm going to go to doctor. I find the best doctor. But all along, while I'm going through it, I'm not fighting against God. I'm not fighting against the elements of the world. This is what God's plan was for me to be part of doing today. And God is with me. Because God says in the Torah, Imo anochi b'tzara. Hashem tells the Jewish people, I am with you in your problems. When you're in a problem, I am with you in the problem. Don't think I am. You know what's the famous parable, a story they give, how this fellow goes up to heaven and he's shown his life on earth. And he sees throughout the journey of his life, sees two sets of footsteps going side by side. His small footstep and a big footstep. Imagine it's God. And then he notices whenever he hit hard times in his life, he only saw one set of footsteps. Where's the other set of footsteps? So he says, I knew God abandoned me. All those times when I needed God most, where was He? He left me. That's why I had all the problems. So at the end of his watching his life, so God says, so what do you say about your life? how do you measure your life and judge your life? He says, well, I mean, God, if only you would have been there. When I had my problems, I would have been dealt with it much better. God says, what do you mean if only I would have been there? That one set of footsteps was mine carrying you on my shoulder. I'm always there. So Hashem is always with us. Whatever we face, daily, unusual, one-time type of issues, Hashem is with us. He brings in us, He gives it to us, and He's with us to make it through. Why does He give it to us? It's a much bigger understanding. Hashem has a plan for every one of us to develop ourselves, and this is what sometimes we have to go through, challenges and hardships to develop ourselves. This is normal. This is the way everything grows in life. No one becomes stronger or better at anything just casually on cruise control. It's always through hard challenges that you have to face, and other hardships you have to face. That's what makes you great at whatever you do. So Hashem is sending you the hardship. So I'm going to get anxious about it. What are you getting anxious about? Deal with it as an issue. Instead of thinking that you're abandoned, that all of a sudden you're on your own, no one cares about you anymore, no one's here to help you. You're not on your own. Hashem is with you. But you have to take the lead. You have to face it. Cut it aside, realize it's not you, start controlling yourself not to let it take you over, don't let it feed itself. And there's a very important thing we read, we read about Joseph and his brothers. So when Joseph was thrown by his brothers into the pit, so the Torah says they threw him into the pit, and the pit was empty, ein bo mayim, no water. So what do we know water? So Rashi, the comments, what do we know water? Because there was no water in the pit, there were snakes and scorpions. So the question is, just because there's no water, there's snakes and scorpions, what is the Torah trying to tell us? So here, psychologically, we learn something very powerful. Our mind, our thought, works 24 hours a day. We think all the time. Dreaming is thinking. Even when we're asleep, we think. When we sleep, we usually think what we thought during the day. It's just a repetition playing in our head. But our mind is working all the time. Our thinking is working all the time. And the Torah says like this, you have two choices. If you don't fill your head with mayim, with water, which represents Torah and knowledge, and positive knowledge, productive knowledge, constructive knowledge, if you don't fill v'aborek, if your head is empty, if the pit is empty, ein bo mayim, there's no water in it, if you're not constantly engaging your mind and giving it what to think, the chashav v'akravim, automatically is going to default to negative, terrible thoughts. And that's what happens. We're in a society, and the Torah, the emphasis is always, you study Torah, you remember things by heart. Why? Because wherever you go, even if you're not holding a book in front of you, you have what to fill your mind. Great people, when they walk in the streets, they think verses of Tehillim, verses of Torah, Talmud, other types of things. Because if we don't fill our mind with stuff, all of a sudden it starts filling with all the negative things. What the newspaper we read that morning, something that someone told me yesterday, all the things that are bad. Because if we don't fill with positive, automatically it defaults to negative. That's what you find. People have too much time to think, get even more anxious, and people have less time to think. Usually they tell you, if you're too anxious, just get yourself busy, stop thinking. Not stop thinking. Control your thoughts. Learn how to put positive thoughts. Start reading things that you can repeat to yourself, positive things. Try to control your mind or direct your mind to fill it with something positive you can think about. Give yourself something that you can walk in the street or sit at home and think constructive and positive things. And Torah is even the best because it builds you up. So, Gamzu L'Tova, we have to remember that ultimately God is with us. And God's going to help us. But we have to take that lead. God is not going to do it for us. He's going to make us take the lead, make us take those steps. He'll be behind us. God is always behind us. He's our shadow. He's behind us. But we take the lead. If we take the lead to say, I want to try to get out of it, I'm going to try to deal with the issue, then Hashem will give us the support we need. But if we say, I'm getting angry, irritated, Hashem says, okay, I'll give you the chance to get more irritated if you want. You take the lead. You fill your mind with positive thoughts, with Torah thoughts. You're going to fill your mind with all the negative, the defaults that are going to drive you crazy. And Hashem, I'm not going to save you from yourself. You're the one who takes the first step. And this is what Rabbi Akiva taught us. Gamzul Tova. Remember, Hashem is always with us. We're never alone. And when you're not alone, how can you get anxious? Hashem's with you, how can we get anxious? We have the greatest, our maker, our creator, the one who loves us, who cares for us, more than anyone else. That's what Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, famous song, that's what he said. Kol Olam Kulo. The entire world is Gesher Tzar Mod. There's a very narrow bridge. But the main thing is Lo Lefached Klal. Do not be afraid. The world is a narrow bridge. Throughout our life, we're going to feel like we're always on a narrow bridge where the fall is very deep on both sides. It's a narrow bridge. You don't have room to just hang around and leisure yourself. You have to be very focused. Because the minute we lose focus, and the minute we start playing to our fears, to our negative, meaning we don't fill ourselves with positive in our thinking and in the way we approach things, and you get afraid, you can't even cross that bridge. But the minute you're not afraid, whereas God is with you, let me focus. You don't need more than a narrow bridge to cross a thing. Just like you don't need a big chair to sit. But someone who's uncomfortable with themselves and doesn't find themselves, even a big bench is not big enough for them. They never find their place. Someone who's comfortable, has a little space, feels very comfortable and fine. And that's what the idea is, to remember, ultimately. Hashem is with us. Hashem creates the challenges. Hashem is with us to help us get through the challenges. But we're the ones who have to take the steps. And as long as we're able to remember that, and then to separate ourselves from the things that we're facing, we realize it doesn't define us, but let's deal with it as an issue. And realize that the amount of control we have, that we can control what we delve into in our thoughts, doesn't come necessarily easy. But if we follow those steps, firstly is remembering Hashem is with us, and having faith. Faith doesn't say, because I have faith, I have no responsibility. On the contrary, faith says, because I have faith, I have so much responsibility that I can actually control what's coming my way. Nothing can ever take control of me. I will control what comes my way, and I will deal with it. That's the power of faith. Well, otherwise you say, leave it up to chance. Whatever ends up happening, happens. But if you take control, you find you always overcome your issues. You'll always be able to overcome. Most of the issues you'll be able to overcome. And even the issues we can't overcome, it still doesn't bring us down. We learn how to deal with it in a way that never associate with us. It never brings us down to size ourselves and say, I'm a failure, I'm a nobody, I'm never going to be worth anything. Those are not words we find anywhere in Judaism and the Torah, because it's not true. So these are just some short thoughts and anxiety and how we have to deal with it according to the Torah. Before we close the class, because allow for the other class to happen, if anyone has any questions. Anyone have any questions? No one's anxious anymore? Good. Then we're good.